And it's actually very exciting because when you give employees the opportunity to say, I would like to do this, and give them the support they need, as in financial or leadership or training or mentorship, it's exciting to see what they can present. Anything from something that may seem small but impactful to kind of a whole new business line. And, it shouldn't be just one person in the organization that does that. So how we offer that is kind of through an endowment type fund that is set up to say, we're going to allocate this many dollars this fiscal year. You bring to us your ideas, your business plans, and let's talk about how we can make that work. And the criteria is, we want it to meet our mission. We want it to be able to support the community. And we want your great ideas to do that. And that really empowers employees.
All right, everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Hart Hustle podcast. I'm incredibly excited because I have an amazing leader sitting across this digital table with me. Jill is the executive director of Pioneer Resources, Inc. Now, Jill, I want to talk about the amazing impact that you guys are having as an organization. And I think the best way to sum up what you guys do and why you do it comes from a story that you were told by a board member who was 100 years old. What was that story?
Yeah. It was such a great opportunity to sit and listen to him tell this story, really seeking out, okay, how did the organization really start? And so he shared that, this vision of this church that's on this curve, and it's really the church that you picture when you picture old school church with the white steeple. And he said there was a pastor there who would see his parishioners, a husband and wife, come in each week, but they came in individually. So one week the wife would come, the second week the husband would come. And so finally he asked out of curiosity, really, why do you come in separate and not come in together? And they said, well, we have a closet child. And he said, I don't know what that term means. And that terminology was used in the 1940s when a family had a child with disabilities, because typically that family was told by their physician, your child will be best served sending them away to this hospital. You don't have to worry about them. We will take care of them. Well, this family didn't want to do that. They wanted their child in their home. They wanted to care for that child in the best way they could. And so in order to keep them safe, at times they would lock them in their room to ensure that they were safe, or make sure that they were available to them directly one-on-one in that home. And that's what this family was doing. And the pastor really shared that, there's another family that's experiencing the same thing. Maybe you could help each other. Maybe our parish could help you guys as a whole.
What an amazing story. Destigmatizing some of the challenges that we naturally face, right, as a family and as a community, and coming together to make that safe space is super important. So Jill, we're the executive director right now of this amazing organization. We were a social worker at one point in time, or forever being a social worker. Who were you as a child? Why did you decide to kind of go down the path of being a social worker? What type of things inspired you to do this work at a young age?
Yeah. So I think certainly seeing family members in caring spaces, having positions. My dad was a teacher. My mom started out providing emergency medical care to individuals, and then having family members who had a disability. But I think that key turning point was really attending a vocational school in high school. And I attended to be able to go through a career in preschool, teaching preschool. And the teacher saw something in me and decided to place me in a special education classroom. And so really my eyes were enlightened. I saw the need, and it really inspired me to continue to work in this field.
What was that like, especially being at such a young age,
Yeah.
right? And serving such a population of people who need support. Were you ready to kind of live up to those challenges at such a young age? And I wonder what that aha moment was for that teacher who said, hey, we're not going to put you in preschool. We're going to put you in special education. Did you
Right.
ever learn about what that was like?
I think, and I still talk with that teacher today. She actually lives in the community where Pioneer Resources is. So it's such a great connection to see. And I thank her and tell her how she's inspired our organization in so many ways. And really it was just that. She said, I see you could take on challenges, and I see that there wasn't a barrier that you didn't want to resist. And so, I think I follow that path now. There's a lot of barriers in services to individuals with disabilities, and it's really figuring out how can we break down those barriers and make sure they receive the services that they should be receiving, and they have access to the community as everyone else does.
And very transparently, we need to be able to support our community more than ever. But it doesn't come without its challenges, right? Reimbursement rates, staffing, all of these are different types of challenges. So what does the current landscape in your guys' community look like when it comes to providing these services for the community and people in need?
Yeah, I think when we look at the challenges that pose barriers in this line of business, it starts with the funding. If the funding is not appropriate to meet the service in a quality way, then we have to look at how do we support advocating to change that funding. Our funding stream for our organization is about 80% Medicaid or Medicare funding. And so our role and responsibility and what we encourage families, persons served to do is to really advocate for that additional and appropriate funding. The barriers that exist within the organization are certainly staffing challenges. We are staffing residential group homes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas. It doesn't matter if it's Easter morning. We need to have quality staff providing those services. And so finding quality staff who are able to be skillful enough to provide those quality services and also accept schedules that aren't the normal schedule, and to accept a pay that is not what it should be for their level of experience, the work that they do, and the hours that they work. And then I think it is just as we look at the world of insurance, I think is a barrier. And in the Medicaid world, that insurance authorization comes from community mental health. So that's how it operates in Michigan, not in every state. And currently, as those funds come through the state from MDHHS to our prepaid health integrated systems, PHIPs, to the CMHs, there's a lot of layers of dollars that are coming off first before it actually gets to the person receiving those services.
How does that make you feel as the executive director who knows how vital your guys' services are to be able to serve the community? It doesn't seem like we have the pipeline of both funding and talent coming to us to be able to serve at the rate and the severity need that we have in the community. So how do you kind of feel about the current landscape of the space in general?
I think that we have opportunities, and I think that's my favorite word, and my leadership team probably gets tired of hearing it.
I love that.
Opportunities doesn't mean it's easy, but an opportunity means we need to work together. So both as an individual organization, as a partner organization to other organizations providing the same services as us, to the memberships or associations that we are a part of, like Encompass Michigan, MALA. It's really working together to define how do we create the change that needs to happen.
And how do you think about the word impact when it comes to, working and collaborating with so many different types of organizations and the impact you guys have in the community? How do you kind of sum up that word? Because it seems like you guys are doing so much, but there's also so much demand in the community for the services that we're serving and the people who we're serving as well.
Yeah. I think that impact, to me, that word, it has to be reflected first on, is that impacting the individual receiving the services in a positive way or a negative way? And how we are tracking that and how we are delivering that service, and what are the outcomes of that service as it's currently being provided. So impact can be positive, it can be negative, but we also use that information from that impact to really determine what are those next steps or what are those improvements that we need to make.
So one of the things that I've learned about through having so many of these conversations is CEO burnout in the nonprofit space is really challenging. Now, sometimes it seems like the impact that we're chasing in the community to serve so many can often turn into a horizon. We take one step towards it, it moves one step further away, right? It's very difficult to grasp. So how do you stay grounded in the impact and, the progress that you guys are making in serving the community?
Day by day, but then developing that strategic view of where you need to be. So yes, it's challenging. You rely on others for more, and you need to find a mentor, and you need to find persons that are in that same role to be able to share those challenges, to share those best practices. You can't operate solely. It doesn't make sense in business, and it doesn't make sense in the philosophy of how are we going to improve. So it's challenging.
I mean, I can imagine, but there's a famous saying, it's, you can go fast by yourself or you can go far together. And it seems like the together model, right, of coming together and being collaborative with other organizations, other leaders, is how we meet the need of the community. How has your leadership journey been? So I know being a social worker and being highly skilled at this space does not often equate to being an amazing leader and executive director. So how has this leadership growth process been for you?
So I think growth is a good word in that. Certainly there's things that you assume when you step into a role or a position or an organization. And then there's the things that you learn and you grow. And I don't think that ever stops. And I think that there's always that ability to gain more knowledge, to understand that just because I see it through a specific lens doesn't mean others do. And so using, that strategic planning model to really gain that feedback and education from everyone and take the strength of others' leadership and have that support you, have it support your organization, have it support your team. Again, I think it speaks to that word community and how do we support each other and providing that quality.
Casting a 10-year strategic plan, right, has to be difficult when there are so many elements that are changing, right, from a legislation perspective, state, community laws. So I would say that you have had to become incredibly skilled at being adaptive, right? New data equals new decisions. So how have you kind of leaned into that skill set of adaptability and kind of leading the organization when so much is changing all the time?
I think the focus that we've tried to implement at the organization is one of our team members need to be adaptable. Our team members need to not be of a mindset that things are always going to stay the same. Rather, if we're thinking about how do we focus on continuous improvement and what does that look like, then we're always going to remember that we are looking for things to change. We are looking because we want to improve and we want to make our services better and we want to be able to meet more service needs in the community. So it's really developing that culture of it's not going to stay the same. And if you have that expectation, you're probably not going to be on the right team because it can't.
How do you think about the skill set or the soft skill, if you will, of curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. Embedding that and cultivating that in an organization is very difficult, but thinking or I would say, enabling and empowering our team members to think creatively with curiosity about how we can tackle different challenges seems like it's an absolute must for the position that you guys are in the community and the type of organization that you guys have.
It is. And it's actually very exciting because when you give employees the opportunity to say, I would like to do this, and give them the support they need, as in financial or leadership or training or mentorship, it's exciting to see what they can present. Anything from something that may seem small but impactful to kind of a whole new business line. And, it shouldn't be just one person in the organization that does that. So how we offer that is kind of through an endowment type fund that is set up to say, we're going to allocate this many dollars this fiscal year. You bring to us your ideas, your business plans, and let's talk about how we can make that work. And the criteria is, we want it to meet our mission. We want it to be able to support the community. And we want your great ideas to do that. And that really empowers employees.
Something I picked up on you based on our conversations is you seem to be incredibly optimistic, because there's the great leaders who I talk to on the podcast have two lenses that they look at, I would say, challenges through, right? One is, this is going to be tough. This is going to be a challenge. We're going to have to overcome it. And what you said very strategically and intentionally was, this is an opportunity for us to be able to lean in on, learn, and grow. How have you been able to foster this optimistic mindset that kind of permeates when we have these kind of conversations?
I think it's just built into me and who I am, and you have a choice. All of us have a choice when we wake up in the morning. Do you want to look at the day as, oh, it's another day? Or do you want to look at the day as, it's another day? And so you have to choose that. You have to choose, how are you going to frame your mindset for that day? And so, I love when I hear a great podcast, sharing that with my team and say, hey, I would love for you to take a listen to this. Give me your perspective of what you drew out of that, because it is going to be individual. And that's the social worker in me saying, I want to know how it impacts you and what thoughts it gives you about leadership and how you can support your team. Because it's individual for everyone.
There's an element of accountability in there, which is incredibly freeing. I had an amazing conversation a couple of weeks ago with the CEO and founder of an organization called Days for Girls International. They produced feminine hygiene products for girls in Africa. They've supported over 3.5 million girls across the globe, right? They have about 70,000 volunteers. And one of the things that she said was, we have the opportunity to choose. And that opportunity means that we have the power, and that power comes with a sense of accountability. Do you help your team lean into that sense of accountability about controlling their mindset, controlling how they see the world? Because I'm really inspired to kind of double click on what we were just talking about.
Yeah. And I think our mission speaks to that a little bit, but really it focuses on that vision. And that vision is, we need to be the premier quality provider. And base that around, how do we support the individuals that we serve in finding that quality in their community and building those relationships and just being an integrated part of the community. And it's developed in so many different ways. But again, if we continually focus on that vision, then every decision we make should be also focused on that vision. So every meeting we have, we're reviewing that vision. Every board meeting, every all staff meeting, when I'm in the community talking about the organization, this is what we want to be. And, someone may say, well, don't you provide quality services already? We do to some, but can we do better? Yes, we can. And we need your help to do that. By giving us feedback, by giving us ideas, by helping to fund and support the programs and the needs in the community. Because again, it has to be that ongoing continuous improvement focus.
Have you ever heard of growth mindset by Carol Dweck at Stanford? where she
Yeah.
talks about the entire process of life, right, is to continue to grow and get better. There's always opportunities to learn. And it seems like you kind of lean into that a little bit. So do you share the growth mindset in your personal life and with your team?
Yep. It is. I think it is. And some people, especially when you're feeling overworked, feel like, why can't I just be where I am at right now and be okay with that? And I don't think it's saying that you can't be, but I think it's saying, okay, how can you do that for a time period? And then how do you continually look at what are those improvements we need to make? Um, I think if that choice was to continually stay stagnant, then, I just don't think that you can be in this line of business either.
If we could go back to a younger version of Jill who was just going on this journey, what piece of advice would you give to her about the leadership journey that she's going to be tackling for the next couple of years? What do you think?
Oh, there's so many things. I think certainly always take time to listen to the other person. So whether it is a family member, a community member talking about needs, an employee, part of your leadership team, listening, because once you listen and you hear those needs, that's when you can take it in and step back and build that knowledge from what you hear, because things don't happen individually. And once you've listened, you've built a relationship with that person, and that relationship can lead to other positive relationships and other positive relationships. So I would always say to that person, make sure you stop and listen, and then value relationships as a whole, because those connections that you make, you'll never know when they come back into your life. It could have been a connection you made 10 years ago, but that connection could be so important in another 10 years. And then learning, continuing to learn.
I always think about the relationship aspect, right? We have such an opportunity today, especially as leaders of organizations, to be able to collaborate with other leaders and ask how they're tackling challenges, how they're getting these results, what maybe they're doing differently than us. But that also comes with a sense of an abundance mindset. A lot of leaders find themselves challenged with the scarcity mindset because they have to protect what they have. But often when we are willing to give to others, abundance comes back to us. Do you feel like you have the opportunity often to tap into that abundance mindset, especially with the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah. And I think, again, it kind of leans into that effect of how do we work more collaboratively together to be able to improve? And then also, when you look at mentorship, I wouldn't have the understanding or knowledge on how to deal with a lot of the situations, but relying on others that can mentor me through those situations that may have been through it before, is such a key for all of us. But again, it's how do you have those relationships unless you are out in the community and building those relationships and listening and asking those questions?
What's one of the most powerful lessons that a mentor has taught you, or an instance where they changed the way in which you look at the world?
I think really instilling in me that you don't have all the answers, and to make sure to seek out that information and then take that information and make a collaborative decision, because it's a lot easier to bring people along on a path than to tell people what path to take.
That's very powerful. And that comes with a sense of humility as well, right? Bringing people along, acting like we don't have all the answers, because often we don't, and leaning into the genius of our team members to get those diverse, different perspectives on how we can tackle these challenges, which is so powerful. I want to talk a little bit about soft skills and how important they are for leaders who are especially engaging with this new generation of millennials, Gen Z, and Alpha, who's right around the corner. What do you think about soft skills, and do you think they're important?
I do, certainly again in that social worker mindset. taking the opportunity to build with many of the younger generations that are coming in that value of, we can do our functions of our work, but we need to focus on how are we relating to each other, because we are not singular in this environment. Even if you're working remotely, the engagement that you have to have with other people is so important. One of my team members kind of recognized that with working with a younger demographic, that she just created kind of this customer service type training to really say, what does that look like, all the way down to being in a room and just as soon as you walk into a group of people, really reaching out, shaking their hand, looking in their eyes and having a conversation with them, versus just being on our phone at the
we're
table.
talking about training the younger generation to have those interpersonal communication skills that we were hammered with so much when we were coming up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I was thinking about it in the opposite direction of like, how do we engage with the younger generations when we come into the room? I was saying like, hey, what do we do? Do we say like, hey, your outfit's fire, or, something like that along the way? Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, it's just we're in a point in time where curiosity and leadership has to be leaned into as that soft skill. Right? Because what got us here is not going to get us there. And it's the leaders who are willing to lean in heavily to the new generations and get that cross collaborative mind share, I feel like are going to find themselves being incredibly successful, and everybody else is going to be left behind.
I think when you really reference that collaborative, yes, because one piece of it is, individuals don't always naturally know how to have those soft skills. But then it is also, my generation, learns so much from that generation as well. And taking the time to say, what is it that you value about work? Or what is it that isn't working out well, so that we can kind of create a space or a way, such as just flexibility in hours. What do you want your work day to look like? Do you want to work from home? Do you want to work in the office? Because it's different for every individual, and it's not even just based on which generation they grew up in.
One of my favorite leaders, I was hoping that I had a book around me, so I don't want to interrupt the episode, but Gary Vaynerchuk, goes by Gary V on social media. One of the things that he talks about in his leadership style, when someone is hired into his organization, he takes the first couple meetings to really understand that individual and what they want out of this role and responsibility. Do you want a bigger title? Do you want to make more money? Do you want work-life balance? Do you want unlimited PTO? What are we trying to get out of this? Because when we as leaders can understand what the true motivation is for what somebody's doing in work, we can align everything else with their end goal and objective. What are some of the lessons that you've learned when asking some of these questions of younger generations? What is important to the people inside, Pioneer Resources and everything else you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think, certainly titles are important. And so understanding that a title has a lot of responsibilities, not just for the individual, but when we look at an HR world, we look at a title, they're taking that title and aligning it with a wage scale. So making sure that when a person is coming to us and they're saying, I would like to be this, really finding out, what does that mean to you? What about it is what excites you? Is it just the salary? Is it the responsibility? Is it the hours? Is it the title? Because it can look so different, especially from organization to organization. So I think what you said is, yes, so key and important. Each supervisor meets with each staff every year and really builds what we call a succession plan. Where do you want to be? What do you enjoy doing? What do you want to learn to do? And how can we help you get there? Because we have to build people up from within to be able to kind of create this great future for the organization. Because we can't just say that it's a one and done. Here's the leadership team and that's it. We have to be continually looking at what does that mean for 5 years, for 6 years, for 10 years, for 70 years.
It's being able to cast that vision is incredibly important. I want to ask a little bit about one of the hot button topics that a lot of leaders find themselves having to explore with a lens of curiosity. What are you guys thinking about in the world of technology, artificial intelligence? What are these kind of things going to mean to Pioneer Resources as you guys navigate the future and having a bigger impact? What are we kind of thinking right now with your unique perspective as the executive director?
We love it. Really embracing technology, AI and all of the tools that it can offer us. But I think when you work with a group of individuals who have disabilities, they're always looking at what can I use to adapt and better enable me to do something. And so we're in that mindset already. So if that adaptation means a walker or a wheelchair or increased access to technology for hearing or vision, we're already in that mindset of thinking, yeah, that makes sense. So why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just grab onto and navigate towards, any technology that is going to make us better or smarter or give us more information? In grant writing, it's a chat GBT is a great tool. Why not utilize it? Work smarter, not harder.
Work smarter, not harder. I love that. Well, how do we get the people who maybe are a little bit of fearful about this technology to lean into this new opportunity for them to work smarter, not harder, especially when they think that this could be a threat to my job, as an example? How do we navigate that?
Yeah. And, I think many times in many industries, they could see that as a threat to their job. I think in our industry, it's so unique that really you need people to support people that I don't see it as a threat. But certainly there's those hesitations with people to utilize that. And I think it's just sharing. This is how I think it could be a benefit, in small little snippets of information, in sharing how I have used it, or another leader can share how they've used it. And it's just showing the benefit.
Yeah, inspiring through actually doing is really important. That's one of the best ways in which I've gotten my team over the last couple of years to adopt tools like ChatGPT and all these other things that help them do things quicker. Is I will have to literally demonstrate, hey guys, this is the process that I went through to tackle this challenge. And instead of having a meeting for 25 minutes as a group, I was able to put this prompt into the system and get this output, which you guys gave input on. And now we have the result. So inspiring others by demonstrating and actually doing, super important lesson for a lot of leaders out there. Jill, I want to talk a little bit about what the future is going to look like. So when we talk about the impact that we've had, the impact that 100-year-old board member shared about the story and why the organization was started, what did the future years look like for Pioneer Resources? What are you guys going to accomplish? What are we tackling?
It's hard to envision that in a service that is so rapidly changing in so many ways. But the service needs aren't changing. So we take that balance and we have to come together, which we're just starting our new strategic planning process. And really, again, we're going to take feedback from all areas of the organization, every level of staff, all the way through to the community, to person served, to really develop, okay, what are those things that are priority to you and how are we going to work to do that? But sustainability is so important. If the needs are still there, certainly times are going to change. Families may be more apt to have their children who has a disability stay home with them. And so residential needs may not be such a high need as they were in the past. And so just understanding what that landscape looks like. But data is going to be key for us and making sure that we can show the quality in what we do through that data.
Incredibly important. The more ways we measure, the more ways we can win. It's one of my favorite sayings. The data is so important to be able to quantify the impact and the effort that we're putting out there. Jill, one of the traditions we have here on the podcast as we put the wheels down to land the plane is we have a blind question from our previous guest. Now, our previous guest wanted to ask you this question, which is, what motivates you today? And is it different from 10 to 20 years ago?
What motivates me today? Truly, what motivates me as a person and ultimately as a leader is my love to help people. So I think that it's important, but I don't think that you can forget. I don't think that you should forget that you can't always help everyone, because not everyone wants help.
And has that changed from 10 to 20 years ago?
I'd say so. In my mind, I always felt like helping was a positive thing. And if I did it, there should be that expectation on the other side that the person would appreciate that. And it's learning that helping doesn't mean looking for that appreciation. It just means, what am I feeling inside from doing that?
That's a beautiful place for us to put a bow on today's episode, Jill. Once again, Thank you so much for being the definition of heart and hustle, the things that you're doing for the community, the ways in which you advocate, the ways in which you innovate to be able to meet the needs of the community is truly inspiring. So for everybody who's tuning in and watching, Jill, thank you for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.